Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to Humans of Wharton. And we're very excited to have Lucie Gavrilova, Wharton 2004, with us today. Lucie, how are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. Nice to see you guys. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me for this podcast.
It's a pleasure. So, why don't we kick off with what led you to Wharton in the first place?
Right. Well, I'm Russian. I grew up in what used to be a Soviet Union, and I think having grown up in a communist or socialist society, you don't necessarily think of becoming a Wharton finance graduate many years down the road. But I think I started to realize that I'm interested in finance and economics when I was around 14, 15, I think. Started reading whatever was available, whatever I could find about the Western credit and financial systems, which was very unusual for a 15-year-old teenager from Siberia. But one thing led to another, and basically I ended up in St. Petersburg University studying economics, Das Kapital in original, political science, and things like that. So what led me to Wharton specifically, I think after my undergrad, I joined an accounting firm. I was very successful being a tax manager, audit manager, managed a group of people. And I think I would continue along this path, but something like after 6 or 8 years of accounting career, something started telling me that this is all nice and fine, but what I really want to do is something else, and there's something to do with finance and investments. So I was 28, and some people think it's a bit too late. I certainly was of an opinion that it's a bit too late to change a career when you're 28. But I had a very good friend who suggested that I look at MBAs, and I applied to 4 different schools, got admitted to two schools, and I have a very good friend whom I met when I worked in Moscow. He was a hedge fund manager. Some of you may know it, Bill Browder. So he was a very good advisor to me, and I had to choose whether to go to INSEAD for 1 year program or whether to go to Wharton for a 2-year program. I think I'm still grateful to him for his advice. He said, INSEAD is great and it's well known in Europe, but if you were to do a career in the United States, then Wharton would be opening doors for you for sure. Whereas not every American institution is still aware of what INSEAD is. And I think that was a critical argument for me to choose Wharton above any other program. So that's what happened.
So I have to thank Bill Browder for having met you.
Right. Yes.
Thanks, Bill.
Well, in a sense, yes, that's right. Because I was inclined to go to a 1-year program, less that, quicker MBA degree, right? Like just 1 year of studies.
Yeah, the economics looks much better. Yeah. And many successful people came out of INSEAD program, right? So
right.
Yeah.
I think the argument that if you see your career in finance specifically, there is no better school than Wharton or Chicago, maybe the next best. So I think that was a key argument.
That makes total sense to me. I mean, I'm so fascinated about like where you've come from and like how you've gotten to where you are. And like what really stood out to me about your little intro talk is that how interested you became with like Western economics and finance at such an early age. And like, I would love to drill down on that. Like what inspired you to be so interested of that in like an early age? And like, how has that continued through your career?
Oh, thank you. Well, I think that's my dad's influence for sure. The more I reflect on my life, the more I think that he had a fundamental influence on me as a person. So my dad is blind, completely legally blind person. He lost his vision when he was 18. But he was very curious and very smart person. So he never gave up. He got his degree in history, and since I was 6, since I learned how to read, it was my job to read him newspapers and magazines in the evenings. So every evening after dinner, we would sit down, and he would give me, me being 6-year-old, to read him magazines. And he was like a proper Renaissance man, interested in everything from poetry to finance to science and art. And I was reading about Leonardo and
Wow.
all different political news, of course. So when I was 6, I already knew that I had strong opinions about China and Mao Zedong. And
Wow. At 6 years old, I'm just picturing this little like 6-year-old girl that's like this ball of energy and like
right.
debating with like adults about politics. That's so funny.
If you remember,
That's Lucy for you.
in the late 70s and early 80s, right, when I was in my beginning elementary school years, I remember vividly coming to a play date for one of my classmates when we were 10. And she said, should we play dolls? And I said, no. The Chinese are going to invade us. The next war is about to happen. So we have to train martial arts to be able to defend against invasion, because there was a lot of tension back then between even though they were in a communist and a socialist camp, two countries had really lots of conflicts politically. So there was a lot of talk about potential war between the Soviet Union and China. So that's what I absorbed by reading newspapers to my dad, and I started preparing training for martial arts when I was 10, and my friends were playing dolls, So from that, the next step was Das Kapital, very easy.
That is amazing.
Yeah. But if you ask me, I think it's my dad. I was a bit unique even among my friends. Yeah.
So, Lucy, can you tell us about your journey into portfolio management?
When I was looking for my summer internships, it was year 2002, 2003, quite difficult. Economically, it was very difficult years. I think it was quite tough to find any summer internships. And especially for me as a career changer, I was preparing that. I was always interested in investment management. Was a member of the investment management club. Wanted to do the buy side internship, but recognizing how difficult the situation was, I think I was prepared that I will get no offers being a career changer, no previous experience. I was prepared to go and work for free for like maybe a pension fund in Utah or something, right? So anything to get an experience, to get experience of being in that industry. And I think I was quite lucky. I've got actually 2 offers in London. Both of them were in London, and I one of them was fantastic. Was Fidelity International in the London office. It was like a top choice for me, and dream came true. So I joined them for my summer internship in the summer of 2003, and I got a full-time offer at the end of this internship. So first 2 years, I was extremely new to the industry, was working hard, not really going out too much, dedicated to work, trying to understand how to get an edge and to develop my own style. I was an analyst for 4 or 5 years at Fidelity, looking at the emerging markets, telecoms and emerging markets banks. And I think that was a very formative experience being an emerging markets banking analyst during the global financial crisis. Really opened my eyes to the way the system works, the deeper piping, the deeper plumbing of the financial system. I think even being at Wharton, I took every single possible macroeconomic class, Professor Siegel's class, and securities analysis and more advanced finance analysis classes. But I think even that did not prepare me for the global financial crisis, right? I think just being on the job, looking at what's going on in each different country and different economies in emerging markets, talking to various economists allowed me to develop my own framework of analyzing it, looking at things, and being successful in picking good or bad companies. Right? I think I must say, I in those years I became a big supporter of the Austrian School of Economics, which is the opposite of the Keynesianism in many ways. In my opinion, it's quite poorly understood. The popular understanding of it is quite skewed by the Keynesian school, that kind of the antithesis of it. So what I realized during the global financial crisis is that there were people who saw this crisis coming, and for the exactly right reasons. And once I realized that we did have somebody who could see it coming, I started to listen more to those people and try to understand why, what kind of analytical framework allowed them to reach that conclusion, and learning from them. And that led me to the Austrian School of Economics. So I successfully applied it in a practical ways by analyzing credit data from different economies, made lots of good calls in August 2008, right before markets really started selling off. So I think I just got reinforced in my views in the years since that the Austrian School of Economics is this school of economic thought that really helps us to make sense of what's going on, and very consistent, logical framework that explains what I see around me empirically.
And so, based on that, what do you think is going on now? There are many views and predictions about what's going to happen now in the markets. What do you think?
Well, it depends whether we talk about the short-term views or long-term views. My current kind of understanding is that we have a very difficult 10 years ahead of us. Very, very difficult, several years. I see that the monetary system, the credit and financial system that we developed after the World War II, it has evolved into what they call a fiat system, right? Which is a money system not supported by any real asset, where each country is free to increase or decrease its money supply as and if necessary. So this creates a lot of conflicts and gives an instability to the whole global financial system. For a long time, dollar was the currency that we used for settlements in the international trade. I think the tensions within the system reached the point when pretty soon we will have to make decisions on maybe the foundations of a new monetary system for the international trade. And I'm worried that such changes don't usually happen in an organized way, right? There are countries that will have a lot to lose and countries that have a lot to gain, depending on what will be that new system that we choose. So I think it will happen not in an organized way, but through volatility and monetary disorder, I'm afraid. So I'm preparing for this to be a key event for the next 10 years, the change in the global monetary system. That what that new monetary system will be, it's not yet clear. I think we have new technologies through that blockchain technology that came in, and definitely it will be part of the solution. But a lot depends on a political kind of outcome, or how different countries will play this four-dimensional game of chess, I think, from a geopolitical point of view. So I see a lot of conflict, a lot of social conflict, a lot of struggle between those who want a more fair system and those who are enjoying the status quo. I think the wealth inequality reached the point when it has to be addressed, absolutely has to be addressed in many countries. And sometimes I'm jokingly say to my friends that I was born under the socialism, and I think I will die in the socialism as well. Because, to be honest, I think the government is more important now than even if it was like 20, 30 years ago when I was starting my professional career. We never used to organize that much about different governmental decisions. It was more of free market forces shaping the outcome of competitive struggles. Right now, I think we probably spend more time thinking about what the government will do, what the Federal Reserve will do, what different regulatory bodies will do, than we think about the competitive environment. So in some ways, I am worried that we will have more and more government intervention and less reliance on natural forces such as your immune system or the market forces, right? To me, they're at one extreme, right? Self-organizing natural systems and the systems that are centralized and supposed to be rational, right? That there is always a tension between this. I'm afraid the pendulum swung towards the more socialism, even in the capitalist countries. So.
But I am curious, what would be your recommendation to policymakers or the decision makers in the economy, like to best mitigate what you see as like the next 10 tumultuous years? Like, how can we best navigate this?
It's a good question. I think there are two things that stand out for me off the top of my mind. One is we need a system of honest money, right? The system when we can at whim decide whom to support through non-budgetary, like purely monetary interventions, right? Similar to what happened in March 2020 when the Federal Reserve started buying securities, right? Bailing out those who held those securities and bidding up the price. So I think there are lots of arbitrary decisions in the current system that make it very unfair, and that has to stop. I would suggest that's my long-standing dream, is that at some point we abolish the central banks. They are considered as heroes that saved the world during the global financial crisis. I actually deeply disagree with this interpretation. I think they are a force that in a very big way contributes to the social inequality, wealth and income inequality that we observe right now. There's lots of debates, like what's behind this massive income inequality. Some people suggest it must be technology. Some people say it must be globalization, etc. I think much bigger force and not credited properly is the monetary system that is very dishonest, that the money, freshly printed money distributed to somebody, right? And those somebody who are the first ones to get hold of the freshly printed money usually are beneficiaries. And in our system, these are the banks, right? The banks benefit from the Federal Reserve bidding up prices of assets. So it's one of the mechanisms through which financiers are very well paid and a prosperous sector of the economy that has a brain drain flowing towards it. So one of the recommendations would be to go back to the honest money when the budgets are balanced and nobody can print money out of thin air. And the second one, I think, would be we need to look, especially in the United States, at the foundations of what entities have the right of vote, right? Maybe to limit the influence of large corporations in the political processes in the United States.
What Sean should do with his savings? Silver or gold? Oh, no, silver or Bitcoin?
I'm all in on GameStop right now. No, I'm kidding.
Wow. Well, that's a good question. Look, I am extremely positive on the commodities at the moment. I think we're in the beginnings of a new big bull commodities cycle. And in particular, I'm very focused on a little niche sector such as uranium mining. I think there are very beautiful disbalance already formed between supply and demand of uranium. It's a deeply cyclical industry that cannot be corrected immediately. It takes at least 10 years to build a new uranium mine because of environmental and social regulations. Okay. So even if there is a massive demand for uranium, it will take you 10 years before you can respond to that rising demand. So due to past underinvestment, we already at the point of significant deficit in the uranium market, and it will get only worse for the next 5 to 7 years before the new mines are being built. Mm-hmm. So we have a beautiful setup there, and I would encourage all of you to have a deep look at the uranium sector and research it. And I have 50% of my net assets in that sector. But it doesn't mean that there are lots of maybe other interesting pockets. You just can't know them all. I'm also quite positive on silver, big supporter of silver squeeze, and Bitcoin. Bitcoin, I think, is a speculative asset. I don't think it will stay with us for long, because the government will have to intervene and put an end to this competitor to the digital currencies that they're planning to launch, right? But for the time being, the institutions are piling in, the momentum is behind it. So I think for the time being, it's a good speculative bubble if you feel like participating. So, I personally prefer to stick to the physical, get physical, uranium.
I can imagine you and your little radioactive vault in the basement.
Right, the yellow cake in my basement.
Can you tell us a bit more about the fund, Lucie? Where did your taste for music came from?
Well, I don't know, to be honest. I always loved music. Again, when I was 6 or 7, I approached my parents and I said, do whatever you want. I need to go to a music school, right? I was very persistent. So I got what I wanted. I went to a music school and spent maybe 5 years studying music theory and different instruments and solfeggio and music theory. So I don't know. I think I enjoy dancing. I enjoy music. It's a big part of me. All sorts of styles of music. Omnivorous. My music preferences, from opera to rap to hip hop, and So I think I just love people. I really enjoy seeing people having good time at the disco parties, and I think I have a good sense of a crowd and what the crowd wants, what type of music it wants at this particular moment in time. So I have my repertoire, and I can choose what works at this particular moment, right? And that's the key to success. But I agree, Lena. Russian parties were quite good and enjoyed by everyone.
What I wouldn't give to go to school 13 years earlier.
So the most recently, I was actually thinking a lot about what is my wealth, and coming to the conclusion that the most important things, maybe two. One is your own health. My wealth is my health. And the second is your social network, your friends, your colleagues, your contacts that you develop through interactions in a professional field. These are the only two things that really matter, like the quality of your social network and your health. Because the body is the most important physical asset that you will ever own, right? I used to think that maybe it's the houses, the cars, the savings account. No, the most important physical asset that is ever entrusted to you is your own body. So this is the fundamental for any happy life. And then your social network. I would give to my children or to whoever wants to listen to my my advice. I would say that we need to be extremely skeptical about what we hear. Every time now that I hear any opinion offered to me, I ask myself, why do I hear it now? Who is interested in me hearing this information right now? Became extremely distrustful of any opinion or any information, and I think it's an essential skill in the modern world that are bombarded by fake news, by different interest groups, and that's an essential skill that I try to develop and cultivate in me and in my children as well.
What are the ways that you consume history? Is it through books, movies, documentaries, podcasts? Like what's your way of learning about it?
I think in many ways, the starting point was Twitter or podcasts, right? When you hear somebody whom you respect, an investment professional, or maybe a journalist or historian, share their views, and then quite often they would mention a book or two that is worth reading, and then that leads you to reading the underlying book, and I think that's essential. That's unsubstitutable, right? So I have a long list of books I read and yet to read.
What would you say is the most important book on history that's helped you in terms of like being an investment manager?
Well, there is one book that I recommend to a lot of my people who are interested in this topic. I usually recommend The America's Great Depression by Murray Rothbard. It's one of the Austrian economists. He wrote a few books about the monetary system, and one of the books that I really enjoyed reading was The America's Great Depression by Murray Rothbard. He has a very good chapter there which describes the Austrian theory of business cycle. And I think this is like a really good introduction also into the Austrian School of Economics. This is the essential feature of this school that differentiates it from all others. They explain why suddenly a lot of smart, talented people, entrepreneurs, collectively make a cluster of mistakes.
I have a question touching back on the advice that you were giving and what your definition of wealth. I kind of took notes as like wealth equals your health plus your social network. I would love to drill down on what like specifically like your social network means to you, and also I guess it being the Wharton podcast, like the professional network, like how has the Wharton network sort of helped you out in your career, and how do you derive that sense of community from your network?
Well, the social network, I think, it's just one of the fundamental components of your happiness, right? I think I read recently, a few years back, the results of a Harvard longevity study when they studied one cohort of Harvard graduates back from 1940s, and monitored them all their life and interviewed them. And one of the conclusions was that what makes people happier are just two things. One is your mastery, right? How good you are at what you do. It doesn't matter what you do. You can be a carpenter or plumber or doctor or politician. It's just the mastery that other people recognize your professional qualities, your skills, right? And this gives you a sense of happiness. And the second element of happiness is the quality of your social network. I mean, not the quantity, not the number of connections, the quality of those like 8 to 10 people who are closest to you, quality of interactions with them. So I think ever since I really struck me that thing, and gives you a bit of a direction, like how do you spend your free time? How do you spend your money even? If I can make my friends happy, I'll spend the money for if I can help them grow or improve their lives somehow. So I think now I have actually a dream. It's a new thing, a new thing on the block. But I have a dream of, I feel like increasingly frustrated by the way we live in a modern society. That every family is a separate unit. We are friends. We meet like once every 3 months for a weekend, and maybe chat on a WhatsApp or things like that. But I think it's so limiting, and it's so insufficient to my ideal kind of view of the world. So I would like to create a movement among my closest friends, a few families, like maybe 5 or 6 families that I know very well, and I know they will like living next to each other, to create some sort of community, to maybe encourage people to move closer to one neighborhood, or so that we can cook dinners together. We can maybe children play together, and we have this like community. I don't know, maybe like in Israel, in kibbutz, people live together, right? Like that kind of sense of being together, helping each other, fighting problems together. That's really important for me. So that's my dream. If I can convince my closest friends to move closer to each other, not follow your individual kind of career aspirations or family circumstances, but prioritize togetherness. That would be a dream for me if I could achieve that. But in terms of like professional network, I think having a Wharton network was really important. Like even here in London, we have a UK Wharton Graduate Society, which organizes quite often different get-togethers, maybe a wine tasting event, or different lectures on topics. And I think it's fantastic. You keep meeting new people. You you just feel happy and connected, and you feel empowered. That in case you need information, you know where to go and have access to like particularly practically any industry in the world. And I think that gives you like a safety net. That's how I feel about my Wharton alum network.
There was also one more thing that you and I discussed about the retirement age and how we all have to have to plan for the long haul. Can you share your opinion on that?
Well,
Sean will be thrilled, I'm sure.
well, I'm not sure, but let me tell you how my perception on retirement and the lifespan in general changed. I think I used to when I turned 40, I was quite depressed on my birthday, thinking the best half of my life is over, right? Like we live 80 years, and first 40 years are behind me. And now from now on, it's just downhill from here onwards. Quite depressing, right? So for the next 2 years, I lived with a clear sense that I'm riding into the sunset, and I need to start saving for the retirement, and not very happy thoughts, okay? And I happened to be in a conference, a CLSA conference in Hong Kong, and I listened to a lecture by one a specialist in demographic trends. And he mentioned a couple of interesting things. He said the life expectancy is increasing faster than we even anticipated. So we kind of knew that because of advances in the medical sciences and kind of general better healthy lifestyle, we live longer. But the length of our life, the life expectancy is increasing faster than even was factored in our models. And he said striking numbers. He said half of you sitting in the audience today will live to 100 years. And he said it means that half of you will live longer than 100 years, right? And then he said half of the children born in 2007, which is my son was born in 2007, will live to 112, which means half of them will live longer than 112. And when I listened to these numbers, I thought I'm extremely healthy. I will live to 100 and more. I will be in that half that lives there, unless something happens like terrorism or something. I will be in the better half for sure because I know I have a very healthy body. So here I am, 42, and I know I will live 100 plus. So I have 60 years ahead of me, and I'm preparing for retirement, right? Like, are you nuts? I ask myself. And I just, like, when you start looking at things from a new perspective, like as if you look through a new lens, not through the lens of previous generations, right? Like I inherited my previous attitude from my previous generations, or from my parents, from the society in general. But once you start looking at your life from the perspective that you have still 60 years of life ahead of you, it changes your perspective. Instead of preparing for the retirement, I actually started thinking about what new degree I may get, what kind of second career I may start at the age 40, 45. And this is extremely liberating because as long as you take care of your body, right? Like low carb diets, no vegetable oils, limited alcohol, lots of sport, and it will serve you for 60 more years. I'm more than sure that there are ways to stay young and healthy for many, many, many years ahead. I'm planning to be beautiful and healthy until I'm 80 at least. So I still have a lot of years ahead of me, in like not limited to by anything. I think I feel extremely energetic. I can start a new degree. I can start my wealth management business. Sky is the limit. I actually think I feel as energetic as when I was 25. But now I'm wiser. I have more connections. I have more financial resources in my disposal. So I'm very happy actually with this new realization that I'm not going into the sunset, but the opposite, which is a great discovery for me, personally.
And I loved what you said to me about since we have another 40 years of professional life ahead of us, we might as well choose something we like.
Yep.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, yes, I think, when a lot of us started from not a perfect maybe position in life, right? There are some economic circumstances. You don't get to choose your first job or your first steps professionally. But I think we are lucky that having Wharton degree and having paid our MBA loans and having a decent career, we are in a position in life when we have enough resources to kind of to see maybe something else makes more sense. I mean, maybe certain steps and choices that you made in your first career were necessary to build you up to the next step when you already wiser, older, more experienced, stronger, and then you can reflect and figure out a way to be the most useful to the society, and this will bring you a sense of accomplishment, mastery, and happiness in the end, right? So I think a lot of people go through midlife crisis, and in essence, this is about like who are you? How do you want to live your life? And if you have a couple of years to step back and rediscover yourself, rechannel your career in a new direction, then great, Maybe you will discover that you should continue. You should continue with the way you started. Maybe that's the perfect way to proceed. So I at some point I was considering maybe having a career in to go and get a medical degree or biochemistry research. But I think most recently, I'm still thinking that probably I will stick to the wealth management business. It really excites me as well. I love it. Really love it. So.
That is so inspiring to hear you say that. Like, really, just at no point, like, I mean, the way you frame it too, it's like I still have all this energy and all these things that I know I can accomplish. Like, I think that just goes to show that at any point in your career, like, we all should, um, be conscientious of, given that you have the comfort to be able to make those decisions, like, do what you want to do, and yeah, don't give up on yourself.
That's true. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Lucie, my last question is about what about this whole MBA is obsolete hype? What do you think about that?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, it depends on a set of opportunities available in a society at that particular moment in time, right? The older generation goes into retirement. There is a new pool of labor or a new pool of talent that needs to step in, and I think MBA is not obsolete. It's if it prepares entrepreneurs, if it gives creative people who already have ideas tools on how to start business, how to navigate this kind of startup environment and financing challenges. That's essential, right? Like, I mean, you have to learn it somewhere, maybe practically, maybe in a school. It's your choice. So I think it's not obsolete, but maybe in the sense that. There was a period when the financial industry sucked in most of the talent, right? It was compensating people so well that all across the investment banks in London, you would find people with PhD in computational chemistry, in nuclear physics. They would get all these degrees for a completely wasted effort by the society to educate them, and then they would go and get an MBA and end up trading in an investment bank. I think this is a waste of talent in a society. So in this sense, if we create enough opportunities for bright people to express themselves through venture capital, through work in creative labs and through new technologies, then I'll be happy if MBA becomes kind of obsolete in this way. I mean, by opening up avenues to smart people in industries other than financial one. I think it's a welcome development. I see more and more talent going into the venture capital, which is great. Great. I probably would do it.
Yeah, that opinion reminds me of other Penn alum Elon Musk. I think he's been outspoken about how essentially, yeah, like the banking sector has been like sucking up the majority of like American talent for decades. And I mean, in terms of what I like to think of, I guess, like, yeah, I mean, the financial industry is definitely allocates capital in a in a productive way, but there are other productive things that we need in our society as well. So
absolutely, yeah, and I think science and technology will be those areas where we can turn around lots of things like climate change and productivity improvements that we need for to become wealthier, like on the recycling and lots of challenges actually from ecological front. Yeah, that would be a worthy goal. Sure.
yeah, agreed.
Well, thank you very much, Lucie, for spending time with us today.
Oh, absolutely delighted to be with you. Thank you for inviting me for your to your podcast. Very thrilled and honored. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you, Lucie.